Hello everyone, it's Fjarlar, and I'm just here to show you this little situation I have set up here. So you can see that this Yusuke has a lot of buffs on him, including Iris Teleport. He's also transformed and has Anger activated. It looks like he's taken a hit though, so if he has last rites, it's surely broken already. On the other hand, I have this Zerida with Bloodthirster prepped all ready to go. Her stats are not very impressive either, but it looks like she should have no trouble taking out this Yusuke. I mean, I know Yusuke can counter from 2 range, but we all know assassins can attack really quickly, so I think we should be pretty safe here. Let's just try diving in here. Oh no, what happened? Well, at least I took out that Yusuke, but it looks like I got a double KO on my hands. So in case the title didn't make it clear, I want to talk a little bit about animations today. Now I'm sure most of you are already aware that animations in Langrisser Mobile actually impact the gameplay side of things. However, just in case you aren't too familiar with this yet, I highly recommend you go check out Anirel's video on the topic. Now while Anirel does speak Russian in that video, she was kind enough to also provide English subtitles. It's quite a thorough video, so I think it's very much worth a watch if you're not that familiar with this mechanic in the game yet. I will provide a link to it in the description of this video alongside the main source that she used for that video, which is in English. So with that out of the way, for this particular video, I just want to talk about a few specific cases of animations that are a point of interest, especially for PvP players. And why don't we start by going back to that situation with Zerida and Yusuke and taking a closer look at what exactly happened there. So I think it comes as no surprise to anybody who plays a lot of PvP that attacking into an angry Yusuke is always going to hurt a lot. Zerida, with Killing Blow especially, is one of the fastest attacks in the game. However, if you look really closely, you'll notice that Yusuke actually attacks before Zerida just a little bit. After that, it does take a little bit of time for Yusuke's baby Raygon to make it across the screen. But even though he dies very shortly after shooting it, it actually doesn't matter that much, because you'll notice that Zerida took 379 damage from each of Yusuke's hits, and before that final Zealot attack hit, she took a total of 7,580 damage. Bit of simple math later, you'll realize that all 20 of Yusuke's hits did hit Zerida, so that means Yusuke's tiny little finger point is enough to let him shoot out all 20 hits at the same time, so even if he dies right after, you're still going to eat every single one of Yusuke's hits. Now of course all the Zealots will die at the same time as their general dies, so you don't need to worry about as many of the Zealot hits hitting you, but if it's a really well built Yusuke, it's gonna hurt. On that note, let's take a look at Yusuke himself. So let's just have him attacking into his Lancer General here. That's a nice bit of damage. So let's just try that again, except this time from range. So I assume that this should probably do... Oh, that's very odd. How did that do less damage from range? So you would think that attacking from range, since you don't have to take a counterattack, you should be dealing more damage. However, this is going to be the first of many examples I'm going to give in this video, where attacking from range actually results in you doing less damage than you would have done in melee range. And there's no Landia shenanigans going on here. There's no range defense or auras or anything like that happening here. Sometimes heroes just do less damage from range. So let's try taking a closer look and figuring out what exactly happened. So here we have the melee attack slowed to 50%. Let's take a look at what exactly happens here. So you can see that the Zealots rush in into attack, and then Yusuke attacks at the same time as the Zealots are meeting the enemy troops. Now let's check out the ranged attack at 50% speed as well. Yusuke attacks, and you can see the attack hits long before the Zealots attack and make it to the enemy. And as a result, the only attacks hitting the general are the Zealot. So here's what we know. We know how much HP the Lancer General has, and we know how much each soldier has by dividing the total soldier HP by 10. We can see that Yusuke does 740 damage to each soldier and 593 per hit to the Lancer General, and the Zealots do a bit more damage at 782 per hit to the soldiers and at 641 damage per hit to the general. So from this we know that the enemy Lancer soldiers can die in 2 hits either from Yusuke or the soldiers, or if soldier and Yusuke adds one attack together to kill one. But that's not what happens in this case because of how the animations shake out. In order to help us figure out how many attacks hit each soldier and how many attacks hit the general, an easy way is to simply look at how much HP the general has left over when the battle ends. Now, from a lot of testing I've done, from what I can tell, the general, or the hero unit, will always do all 20 hits. It will be split across the soldiers and the hero in some cases, but no matter what, the hero will almost always get all 20 of their hits in. This helps to simplify the calculations a little bit, and by doing a bit of math, you can figure out that in melee, Yusuke's Zealots actually missed out on 5 attacks, but at range they actually missed out on 7 attacks. Now, there's a number of reasons that this can happen, but the most common one is because the animations between the hero and the soldiers are overlapping somehow. Or to put it another way, these soldiers, in this case the Zealots, will begin a second attack on one of the enemy soldiers, but Yusuke's attack will come in around the same time and kill that soldier before the Zealots finish their attack, in which case the Zealot's second attack is completely wasted. Now, your personal experiences could differ from this example, because in this example, Yusuke is actually doing less damage than his soldiers, which usually is not the case with hero units. If you look at the detailed numbers I have here, you could probably figure out that there should be a breaking point where Yusuke himself can do so much damage he will make up for the lost attacks in the ranged attack, but that's usually not going to be the case. Now let's finish talking about Yusuke by showing him using his 3-cost skill from range. You'll instantly see that because of the long cast time of his 3-cost skill, it really changes how the animations interact with each other. Specifically, this allows a lot of Yusuke's own attacks to hit the hero instead of the soldiers, which in many cases is exactly what you want. Now you can see that Yusuke and his soldiers are doing a lot more damage here, obviously because he's using a skill. Yusuke's Dark Tincture only reaches the enemy right around the point where the Zealot's attack are finally going to reach the backmost row of the soldiers. So let's break this down a little bit more. Now, because in this case, Yusuke is doing enough damage to actually one-shot the Lancer soldiers, it may actually result in even more attacks lost than usual because the Zealots would begin attacking one of the soldiers and then Yusuke's attack would come in and just instantly kill them. Furthermore, you can see that on the bottom picture there, even after Yusuke is done killing the Lancer General, there are actually still a handful of Zealot attacks that have not reached the enemy yet, and those of course will be lost. Now let's turn our attention to a common PvP tank buster, Sonya. If you use Sonya very often, you may have heard from people that it's ideal to be attacking in melee range with her 3-cost instead of from range, and just based off what we've already learned, you can probably instantly spot what the issue is here. While the animation of Sonya herself is not any different, the ranged attack animation from the Bone Dino is so slow that Sonya will waste a significant number of her own attacks on the soldiers before the Bone Dino hits start registering. Now, of course I should note that in this test, my Sonya is actually unequipped completely, which is why you see that she is doing very little damage compared to the Bone Dinos themselves. It's also why you see this oddity of why, at range, somehow the unit actually did more damage, but ended up not killing the unit as opposed to doing less damage in melee and then defeating the unit. The reason for this is quite simple. At melee range, the Bone Dinos one-shot the infantry soldiers one by one, and then the Bone Dinos used the rest of their attacks on the hero, while Sonya got to hit all of her attacks into the hero as well. Now, the infantry general of course has higher defense and magic defense than his soldiers, so that means a lot of the hits that hit him did less damage than Sonya attacking a bunch of the soldiers, as is the case in the ranged attack. Sure, Sonya did more damage at range because she got to hit the soldiers a little bit, but those hits were completely wasted because the Bone Dinos would have one-shot those soldiers anyway. Now, I know some of you might be thinking, well, what if your Sonya was actually equipped and was able to one-shot the soldiers herself? Well, let's consider that. Even if we assume that Sonya one-shots all the enemy infantry soldiers and then does 10 of her own attacks into the infantry general, and then allow all 20 of the Bone Dino hits to go into the general, which of course probably wouldn't happen anyway because the Bone Dino would be likely to be wasting their attacks on infantry soldiers that are no longer there. But even in that case, you are wasting Sonya's own attacks on the soldiers instead of using the Bone Dinos to kill the soldiers. Now, Sonya's strength is pretty highly concentrated in her personal damage. If you have a very beefed up Sonya, you're going to want as many of those attacks going into the enemy general as possible rather than wasting them on the soldiers. Now let's talk about Sigma a little bit. When people discuss losing attacks in animation, Sigma is a name that will often come up. So first we're going to look at Sigma's 2 bread and butter attacks, which is Neutralizing Fire and Strong Wind Snipe. For both of these attacks, you'll see that the cyborgs will hit the soldiers shortly before Sigma himself starts hitting them. Now in this particular example, the cyborgs are only doing 874 damage per hit to the soldiers. Now there is a pre-battle fixed damage tick from both Neutralizing Fire, and I have a Twilight Star equipped on Sigma as well, but regardless, most soldiers here are going to have 2000 HP, which is obviously more than the cyborgs are able to handle within 2 ticks. So that means Sigma is going to have to use some of his attacks on the soldiers as well. Even though the animation looks like it might have a lot of lost attacks in there because of how it almost seems like the 2 attacks might get shuffled together, the truth is that for Neutralizing Fire and Strong Wind Snipe, Sigma's attacks are actually pretty well organized. You can see in the numbers here that for both cases, almost all the soldiers hit. There is only 1 soldier missing a hit for Strong Wind Snipe, and it should be noted that this is actually not always going to happen. Especially in the case where the cyborgs are able to 2-hit KO the enemy soldiers. Despite what strong Wind Snipe's animation might suggest, Sigma will actually concentrate all 20 of his own attacks into the enemy hero, which is an ideal situation. Still, what about cases like this, where the soldiers are unable to do so? Well, interestingly enough, if you go back and look at the animations again, Sigma actually begins his attacks on the back row of the soldiers, whereas the cyborgs will begin their attacks on the front row of the soldiers. That means that when they meet halfway, there's a possibility that Sigma and a cyborg will attack the same soldier, and as a result, Sigma might lose one soldier attack from a cyborg. But as far as I can tell, this is not a situation that's like the one you saw with Yusuke or Sonya, where you're going to be seeing 5 or 6 missing attacks because of how the animation overlaps with the soldier animations. This problem does rear its ugly head, however, when we take a look at Sigma's normal attack and his stun skill, Savage Attack. Now in this case this is an infantry Sigma, so both his normal attack and the Savage Attack, which is an attack from his infantry line, are both considered by the game, animation-wise at least, as a melee attack. When you combine that with the ranged attack animation of the cyborgs attacking from range, it results in what you see here. Both Sigma and the cyborgs are attacking the front row at the same time, and when you take the final numbers and calculate it out, you will find that for both his normal attack and for Savage Attack, that 4 of the cyborgs' attacks were wasted. If you want to play back the animation, or you can look at this picture I've taken, the middle one, you can even see that some of the swords are actually flying at nothing. Meaning the cyborg began to attack one of the soldiers, but Sigma's attack came in and killed that soldier before that sword could fly over and hit that soldier. So the takeaway from all this is that when the hero tries to do a melee style animation and the soldiers try to do a range style animation, the game kind of gets confused and a lot of these attacks end up overlapping and therefore a lot of them are wasted. Let's finish off this look at Sigma with one final clip. In this one, we're going to take a look at Archer Sigma doing a normal attack with cyborgs against the same target. Now I do have a faction buff in this particular clip, and that was mostly just to make the numbers easier to look at for me. Even if I had faction buffed on Infantry Sigma earlier, I would have ended up with similar results that I got earlier. In fact, if I had faction buff, I actually would have missed 5 attacks instead of 4. But back to Archer Sigma. So as you can see, aside from doing way less damage because Archer Sigma is not that good, you can see that the attacks were well organized, and that the cyborgs killed the soldiers and then Sigma concentrated all 20 of his attacks into Elven. Like I said, in this particular example, Sigma had a faction buff, which is why the cyborgs did so much more damage and were able to hit KO the enemy Lancer soldiers. But as I noted earlier, even if I had conducted the infantry test with a faction buff as well, you still would have seen 5 missing attacks from the cyborgs, which seems to support this idea that ranged attacks from our hero organize very well with ranged attacks from the soldiers. It's when you mix and match the two that you're running into some trouble. And of course for Sigma specifically, even though you can avoid the normal attack having this issue by changing him back into Archer class, as we saw with Savage Attack, because that animation is still a melee animation since it's a skill from his infantry class, you would still run into that same issue even if you used Savage Attack while you were on Archer. So let's finish off this look at missing attacks by looking at Deedlit. Oftentimes I hear it's better to attack with Deedlit in melee instead of ranged, even if there's no Landius around. But as you can see from this test here, Deedlit is going to do the exact same amount of damage in melee as she does in ranged. It seems that for Elven Aura at least, this isn't too much of an issue. It is however worth noting that just like with Strong Wind Snipe on Sigma, any attack done from range can result in you missing one attack from a soldier if your own soldiers are unable to hit KO the opposing soldiers. Let's finish off this video by taking a look at how animations can actually get your tank killed. In this first clip, an Elven with Steelwing Warriors attacks a Landius with Guardian Infantry. You'll see that because Landius is aiming for the Steelwing Warriors in the sky, that he'll stand safely behind his soldiers and just throw a javelin at the sky. Of course in this case Elven is able to break through regardless, but contrast that with some of the clips we're going to play next. This time, Elven is using masked maids, and here you can see Landius showing off his diploma from the school of Leroy Jenkins. As he charges face first into Elven's Sword Soul, he takes the full brunt of the attack, and bringing the Guardian Infantry was ultimately completely pointless. Finally, we have a clip of Elven with Masked Mage using Frontal Assault at Landius. Now many people new to PvP will think that Frontal Assault is perfect for killing Landius as it disables his revive. But as you can see here, Frontal Assault charges so slowly that the Guardian Infantry are able to catch up with Landius and help him tank the entire hit from Elven. This, alongside the fact that Sword Soul will remove 5 buffs and give a 2-turn undispellable heal block, is why many experienced PvPers will tell you that Sword Soul is almost always better than Frontal Assault. Finally, I have this clip of Knight of Mystery attacking Landius with Broken Spear, and he's using Treant guards as his soldiers. Once again, we see that Landius kamikazes his way into the Broken Spear and rendering the Lancer soldiers pretty much completely pointless. This is also the reason why you want to use Broken Spear in melee when versus Landius as Mystery Knight. If you use the range attack, that means Landius will safely hide behind whatever Lancer soldiers he probably brought, and your attack will deal very little damage. Of course, you could also try bringing Steelwing Warriors. Now let's all just enjoy this amazing clip of Lana's 3-cost skill, which is by far the slowest attack in the game. It actually takes like 3 full seconds before it hits anything. But anyway, this video took a lot longer to make than I thought it would, but I hope it's been a useful video and thanks for watching. I'm hoping with the information and the methods that I showed in this video, you can go off and try testing some attacks on your own. And if you think I made any sort of mistakes here, please let me know in the comments. And with that, I hope to see you guys next time.